Truth persists.
आज का भारत सिर्फ आगे नहीं बढ़ रहा, भारत खुद को नेक्स्ट लेवल पर ले जा रहा है.
Together with my friend Prime Minister Modi, who I was pleased to see again last night, we took on our bilateral relationship and raised it to its highest level ever.
We need new answers. That's why we are coming to India.
And as a citizen of Nepal, India's closest neighbor, I feel a deep sense of pride and optimism seeing this stride.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
आज का भारत सिर्फ आगे नहीं बढ़ रहा, भारत खुद को नेक्स्ट लेवल पर ले जा रहा है.
Together with my friend Prime Minister Modi, who I was pleased to see again last night, we took on our bilateral relationship and raised it to its highest level ever.
We need new answers. That's why we are coming to India.
And as a citizen of Nepal, India's closest neighbor, I feel a deep sense of pride and optimism seeing this stride.
Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you are watching the World Report on NewsX World. First, let's have a look at some of the top stories of this hour. And we start with Russian strikes across eastern and northern Ukraine has killed at least 6 people overnight, with rescuers working to douse fires and clear debris in the eastern city of Balaklia, where homes were hit. 3 people died in Balaklia, while another 3 fatalities and at least 19 injuries were reported from attacks on settlements in the northern region of Sumy. Ukrainian police noted that 12 of those wounded suffered injuries in the city of Sumy itself following an attack with guided aerial bombs. Separately, a drone strike targeting a van wounded 6 people in the southern region of Kherson, according to the regional administration. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry announced that its air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 605 Ukrainian aerial drones overnight across Russian territory and the annexed Crimea Peninsula. Local authorities reported that a logistics centre belonging to Russian e-commerce giant Wildfire sustained slight damage during large-scale drone interception. Both Russia and Ukraine maintain that they do not target civilians in the ongoing conflict. Now, to discuss this further, we are being joined by Craig Peacock, who's the Chief Advisor of the Kajaku Japan Advisory, joining us from Tokyo. Craig, thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Pleasure, as always, to be able to speak with you. Thank you. Now, with Russia intensifying strikes on Ukrainian cities while reporting the interception of hundreds of Ukrainian drones overnight, are we witnessing a new phase of escalation, would you say, in which both sides are increasingly relying on long-range strikes far beyond the front line?
Oh, most definitely, Ellie. I think this shows that these attacks are significant, and not because they represent one enormous Russian barrage, but they do show the relentless geographical spread of pressure that's coming onto Ukraine. Sumy city was, as you mentioned, reportedly attacked with some guided aerial bombs and a separate drone strike. 6 people traveling in a van to Kherson, which is alarming as well. Russia appears to be combining, drones, missiles, and increasingly powerful guided bombs to attack communities across several regions simultaneously. The military logic, of course, is to stretch Ukraine's air defenses and their emergency services and the very limited supply of interceptors that they have across an enormous area. So, guided aerial bombs are particularly difficult for Ukraine under present circumstances, and they have such a shortage of interception. They can be launched from Russian aircraft while remaining outside the immediate reach of many of Ukraine's air defense systems. So Ukraine can sometimes, intercept the aircraft or the bomb, but it cannot place advanced air defense batteries inside every vulnerable town that they have. And as well as that, I feel the human effect is a continuing war of exhaustion for Ukraine. Russia does not, necessarily need to have a dramatic breakthrough every day, but they're repeatedly striking homes, vehicles, infrastructure, regional centres, and it creates, a really strong insecurity and makes normal civilian life in Ukraine very difficult.
Absolutely. And both Moscow and Kyiv maintain that they do not deliberately target civilians, yet civilian casualties continue to mount on both sides. We've seen in the past couple of days the casualties in Ukraine are growing and growing, which is severely distressing. What does international humanitarian law require in these circumstances? How does such claims of military necessity versus civilian harm be assessed?
Well, it needs to be assessed, very strongly, I feel. By international law, civilian targets are not permitted. But we've seen on both sides, actually, to be fair, on both sides, civilian targets have been hit. And whether or not they're mistakes or whether it's, some kind of miscalculation is something that really does need to be examined. Of course, there's so much of it happening that can't be done one by one in such a wartime environment. It is very, very difficult. So we need both sides to show an incredible restraint with this kind of civilian casualty happening. Particularly on the Russian side, it's been proven that they're using weapons from North Korea, which are infamously inaccurate. And so they must be using a lot of restraint and need to use a lot of restraint in using those weapons.
Absolutely. Craig, stay with us, please, as I'll be joining back with you in just a moment. Now, tensions along the Israel-Lebanon border have escalated sharply, even as US-backed negotiations aimed at preserving the fragile June ceasefire continue in Rome. According to Lebanese state media, Israeli forces have intensified attacks across the Tyre district in southern Lebanon, wounding at least 4 people and forcing residents to flee. Israeli drones carried out multiple strikes on Burj Shamalia before a fighter jet targeted the same area. Additional airstrikes, artillery shelling and tank fire hit the Al-Mansouri, Majd al-Zoun and surrounding areas, while shelling continued throughout the night into Thursday. Israeli forces also reportedly fired machine guns towards coastal areas near the Bayat al-Sayad. The latest strikes followed the deadly blast in Majd al-Zoun, where the Israel Defense Forces say 2 reserve soldiers were killed and 4 others were seriously wounded after an improvised explosive device detonated during operation targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. The IDF identified the deceased as Major Harel Birkenstock and Sergeant Major Tamir Vaknin, making Israel's first combat fatalities in southern Lebanon since the June ceasefire. In response, Israel launched retaliatory airstrikes, including strikes on Tyre, where Lebanese officials say at least 1 person was killed and several others injured. The IDF was also said fresh evacuation orders for residents of Mansouri, accusing Hezbollah of violating the ceasefire. The renewed violence comes as Israeli and Lebanese delegations meet in Rome for the 7th round of the US-brokered security talks. Negotiators are discussing Hezbollah's disarmament, the phased withdrawal, an expanded deployment of the Lebanese army in southern Lebanon. However, deep disarrangements remain, causing concerns over the future of the ceasefire, and the fighting intensifies on the ground. Craig Peacock is joining us back here once again. Thank you for joining us once again, Craig. Now, with fighting intensifying, even as US-Brooker talks continue in Rome, has the June ceasefire effectively collapsed, not worked whatsoever? Or is there still a realistic diplomatic path to prevent another full-scale Israel-Hezbollah war, given the fact that negotiators are in Rome as we speak, going through this and trying to implement some sort of a plan?
Well, that's a very good question, Ellie. And, I feel the negotiations are trapped by a fundamental sequencing problem here. Israel says it cannot withdraw while Hezbollah remains armed, and Hezbollah argues that it cannot disarm while Israeli forces occupy Lebanese territory. And the Lebanese government lacks the military and political power to simply impose a solution upon Hezbollah. So that is why so-called pilot zones, I think, matter. They are intended to test whether Israeli troops can withdraw from a limited area, the Lebanese army can move in, and Hezbollah can be prevented from returning. But one deadly incident can destroy the confidence required to expand that model. You know, Israel's security concerns are real, particularly after losing soldiers to an explosive device like this. However, you know, broader retaliatory strikes that kill or wound Lebanese civilians risk weakening, you know, the very Lebanese state institutions that Israel needs to replace Hezbollah in the south. So the central danger, I feel, is that both sides begin interpreting restraint as weakness. Israel may believe it must restore deterrence, but Hezbollah may believe that inflicting Israeli casualties strengthens its negotiating position. That's precisely how such a fragile truce becomes a renewed war.
Absolutely. And as mentioned, Israel argues its latest operations were in response to Hezbollah for violating their ceasefire, while Lebanon accuses Israel of breaching the agreement through continued strikes. And Hezbollah are also coming out saying that the IDF are the ones that forced this ceasefire to a collapse. Is the current ceasefire framework still enforceable whatsoever, or has the mutual distrust made it unworkable? We know we were meant to see a phased draw out of Israeli forces within southern Lebanon, so the Lebanese troops could come in and take over. However, I don't think we've seen that at all, really, since that came into effect. And then also there was this talk about this red line, the yellow line. Do you think we're ever going to see a point where Israel will withdraw their forces?
Well, again, that's a very, very good question, Ellie. You know, I think the talks that are happening in Rome are attempting to build a political bridge, but the events that are happening on the ground are destroying that bridge faster than the diplomats can construct it. You know, going back to the earlier story as well, you know, in both Ukraine and Southern Lebanon, diplomacy is being tested by facts created on the battlefield. The danger is that military escalation begins determining what negotiators are permitted to discuss, rather than negotiations controlling the military escalation. It's really a great conundrum.
Absolutely. Craig, thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX. Well, it's a pleasure as always speaking with you. Now we move on as Myanmar's military leader Min Aung Hlaing has received a red carpet welcome in Thailand as Bangkok pushes for renewed engagement with its conflict-hit neighbour. The visit marks Min Aung Hlaing's fourth overseas trip since becoming president in April, following visits to China, India and Laos. Thailand says it wants to encourage Myanmar to return to the stalled ASEAN peace process, which calls for an end to violence and dialogue between rival groups. The president also came to power after the 2021 military coup, who has faced international sanctions and criticism over the ongoing civil war in Myanmar. During talks in Bangkok, he pledged to pursue peace and strengthen ties with the bloc, claiming Myanmar was moving towards a democratic future. The bloc was continued to exclude Myanmar's leaders from major summits, citing a lack of progress on the bloc's peace initiative. The visit also focuses on economic ties, with Thailand seeking to expand cooperation in sectors including energy, banking, manufacturing and tourism. Now, to discuss this further, Major General Sadakaji is joining us here, who's an international defence strategist and geopolitical analyst. Joining us from Jaipur, Major General Sadakaji, thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX. Well, it's a pleasure as always being able to speak with you. Now, Thailand has rolled out the red carpet for the president of Myanmar, while the ASEAN bloc continues to isolate Myanmar's military leadership. We know the country itself is very rocky with the civil war, etc. Does Bangkok's engagement strengthen regional diplomacy, do you think? Or does it risk legitimising a regime that's still accused of widespread human rights abuses?
Inviting me for this special subject, to comment on this subject. It needs to be understood that the situation in Myanmar is fraught with a lot of complexities. There are far too many groups and subgroups who are fighting amongst each other against the Tatmadaw. Tatmadaw is the military. The government's official arm is called a Tatmadaw. Now, because of the ongoing strife, there are large number of people who have migrated, call them under any name, illegal migrants, refugees. They have spilled over the border that Myanmar and Thailand have, and there are large number of illicit drug business people who are spreading narcotics and carrying lots of illegal arms and weapons. So there is a problem which Thailand is trying to actually tackle. So when you look at it in isolation, between Thailand and Myanmar, well, the ex-junta chiefs or the president's visit to Thailand is something to assuage or to address the lingering problems between both the countries. It has also led to a couple of the fighting between two countries in the recent past. So therefore, it has to be understood that basically it is aiming to have some kind of a thaw, improve the relationship between Myanmar and Thailand, as also the bigger aim and objective, which you alluded to in the question, is in order to normalize the relationship with ASEAN and the global order. As on today, because of the 5-point consensus, 5-point consensus is a consensus which the ASEAN had decided sometime way back in 2021 in Jakarta in one of the meetings, that unless the 5 points which they had formulated are implemented on ground, it actually related to bringing this mindless conflict, ongoing conflict to an end, selecting an envoy of ASEAN who should represent and also minimize human rights violation or make sure that there are no human rights violation, humanitarian assistance to be given a free flow movement into the Myanmar, and host of. There are 5 points essentially, but if you look at it in a very dispassionate manner, they cover anything and everything to bring about normalcy back to Myanmar. Unfortunately, the military junta of Myanmar, they have not accepted nor have they actually shown any signs of implementation of this 5-point consensus. So therefore, there is a contradiction between what Myanmar wants and what is actually being projected or expected from the ASEAN. Also be mindful of the fact that there are countries in the world who are gradually extending a level of cordial relations and started accepting the present junta. Like, for example, the president had visited India in the recent past. Also, China has accepted. He's also gone to Laos and such like countries. There are 3 or 4 countries. Gradually, he's trying to make the inroads deeper and deeper so that the normalization of relationship and restoration of some stability and peace in Myanmar comes about with the turn of time and in future times. Back to you, Ali.
And with the Myanmar's president saying Myanmar is moving towards a democratic future, yet the civil war continues, opposition groups reject this roadmap. Is there any credible path, do you think, to a political reconciliation, or is the peace process effectively dead?
Well, a brilliant question you have asked. It is very difficult to predict and carry out an assessment because Myanmar is a country known for intra and inter group rivalry. And within Myanmar itself, there are so many warring factions. So it is very, very difficult to actually predict whether things will actually shape up in towards a path of peace and reconciliation. But there are prominent signatures. When I say prominent signatures, the Aung San Suu Kyi, who is in house arrest, she has been, after a long gap, has been allowed to have the meeting with the International Red Cross Committee, one of the members. And this has happened after a long gap. Similarly, a couple of months back, or maybe a year or 2 back, the foreign minister of Thailand had one-on-one meeting, private meeting with Aung San Suu Kyi. So these are indications that perhaps the military junta is looking for avenues to gradually hand over the power, because the election was just a farce. So everyone knows that it was a big sham. The Western media, in any case, has actually discarded this kind of elections. So therefore, there is a gradual orientation of efforts and also signatures pointing towards some kind of a reconciliation and democracy. But how soon it will happen, it is a tall order to actually predict. It could be anybody's guess. In my opinion, since I have been there, I have handled Myanmar, it's going to take a long time unless ASEAN accepts Myanmar's junta leadership as a member, because Myanmar as such is a founding member of ASEAN. So therefore they should be allowed to participate, and open diplomacy and dialogue for the 5-point consensus. Even if it is not acceptable to Myanmar, they should be allowed to participate in the normal proceedings. Putting them in isolation will further push them to take recourse to violent measures, which is not desirable in today's time.
Thank you so much, Major General Sakaji, for joining us here today on NewsX World. It's a pleasure, as always. Now we move on as Serbian emergency services are currently battling multiple intense wildfires across the entire country as a combination of extreme heat, prolonged drought and dangerously strong winds create catastrophic fire conditions. Authorities are working around the clock to contain the rapidly spreading flames that threaten ecosystems and natural reserves. One of the most critical situations unfolded on Wednesday in the Delaprito Sands Protected Nature Reserve located in northeastern Serbia. This particular blaze reignited after a previous fire which had been apparently extinguished about 10 days ago. Flared up once again, deep ground level embers were suddenly fanned by high velocity winds. This severe outbreak in the southern Banat region, situated roughly 60 kilometers east of the capital city of Belgrade, was already consumed approximately 300 hectares of pine forest. In response to the escalating crisis, the Serbian Interior Minister announced that it had committed all available heavy equipment to combat the disaster. According to reports, 45 firefighters dispatched from several surrounding towns, along with local volunteer fire brigades, are currently working on the ground. Additionally, 3 specialised police helicopters have been deployed for aerial firefighting operations to reach inaccessible terrain. Meanwhile, emergency services continue to battle several other fires across the country. And up next, the Walt Disney Company and TikTok have announced a landmark, first of its kind global content sharing partnership that will bring curated fan-created TikTok videos directly to Disney+, marking a major shift in how streaming platforms engage with audiences. Under the agreement, which will begin as a pilot in the United States in the coming months before expanding to other markets, TikTok creators who choose to opt into the program will have their videos featured both on TikTok and Disney+'s vertical video section called Verts. The partnership gives creators access to official Disney photo and video assets from some of the company's biggest franchises, including Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, FX, and other Disney brands. The goal is to encourage fans to create original content inspired by Disney's vast library of films and television shows, while offering audiences a new way to discover entertainment through short-form videos. Disney says the content on Disney Plus will be carefully curated and refreshed regularly to keep fan communities engaged and connected to the ongoing conversations around popular movies and series. As part of the collaboration, the two companies are also launching the Disney Creator Ambassador Program. The initiative is designed to identify and support top creators by providing increased visibility, exclusive invitations to Disney events, special rewards, and career development opportunities. Disney Chief Marketing and Brand Officer Asad Ayaz said the best storytellers are fans first, adding that the partnership creates a bridge between Disney's stories and the creativity they inspire. TikTok's global head of entertainment, Dawn Yang, said the creators are at the heart of the platform and that collaboration will bring authentic fan expression to Disney+. The move reflects a broader industry trend, with major streaming platforms increasingly embracing vertical videos to appeal to mobile-first audience services, including Netflix, Peacock, Paramount Plus, and HBO Max, have introduced similar short-form experiences in recent months. According to TikTok, users shared an average of 6.5 million films and TV-related posts a day every year, and nearly half of surveyed viewers can say they've watched a movie or TV show after discovering entertainment content on the platform. While Disney sees the partnership as a way to strengthen fan engagement and community-driven storytelling, some online users have expressed concerns over user-generated content appearing within a premium streaming service, highlighting the importance of careful modernization and content creation in the initiative's rollout. And that is all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.